Everybody, this is Scott Allen Miller. Today on a special Sam IT, I'm going to talk about today's ruling from the SEC that ends net neutrality and what that actually means in real terms that matter for Americans. This is a US-focused talk. This is not about IT in general. If you're outside the US, though, you are still affected. The United States represents the greatest hub of the internet, and what affects the US's access to information and freedom affects yours as well, even if indirectly and maybe not as dramatically. It is important to understand what has happened today is fundamental in changing how the US reacts to itself and to the world. There are two really key things that are important here. There's a lot of things that people talk about. They are distractions. Things about how some services will have to pay more, or some will be slower, or our experiences on the internet won't be quite as good. Those things, while they're important, they are specifically red herrings that are being brought out by the media that is being supported by the ISPs for the purpose of making you focus on things that seem trivial and yet seem to be the things that are actually being attacked by the dropping of net neutrality. What's really going on is that the control of the information stream to America is being put in the hands of the ISPs. This means that as of today, the federal government has officially removed the freedom of speech and the freedom of press. It's not that you're not allowed to still speak and that you're not still allowed to publish, but your ability to do so has been turned over to a small number of privately held companies. So there's two pieces here that we have to understand. First, in nearly all US markets, the ISP markets are a private monopoly, meaning they are private companies and they are an absolute monopoly, often guaranteed by the government. There is no open competition. The FCC has openly lied about that, saying that even just having one is competition, which by definition is not. They really couldn't more openly lie about anything than saying there's competition simply by having a choice. They're claiming that your other choice is to have nothing. It's kind of like saying you have a choice of water suppliers. You can take the one you have, or you can do nothing. Obviously, you need water. And one of the most important things is understanding that the internet today is more important by a dramatic degree than anything we've ever had before like it, such as telephones, telegraph, roads, or similar. All of those things were really important, and controlling them as a private monopoly would have been unthinkable. Of course, phones were controlled as a private monopoly, but that monopoly was instantly overseen by the federal government for a very long time and treated more like a government process. So that was different. Even though it was a monopoly, it wasn't given monopoly powers. In the case of the internet, this controls everything we get. It's not like the telephone where it controlled some types of communication, but we still had the mail and newspaper delivery and other things. And it's not like water where, well, you could go drill a well or run to the store and deliver at home. When we take away internet access, or we change the control of internet access, we're changing the control of absolutely everything. Your ability to make voice calls, your ability to read the equivalent of newspapers, your ability to get private diaries or books or anything. The internet controls our access to essentially all information, and we have built a society around the fact that we expect all people to have open and free access to each other through this shared medium. We no longer have open and free access to each other. Even when we pay for access, we don't have any choice, and if our provider decides that they're not going to give us what we pay for, there's nothing we can do about it. You could try taking them to court, there's no hope for you. That is a ridiculous thing that someone could claim, that you could ever win against an ISP in court. They're a monopoly. They would simply take away your internet access, and you wouldn't have access to your lawyers, to information, to go after court cases, to pay your bills. You can do nothing if your ISP shuts you down. You can't make phone calls, you can't research things, you can't send an email. You're helpless. Your ISPs literally control your lives, and now they control what information gets to you. Now, of course, it sounds ridiculous to say that your ISP is simply going to decide that you're not going to see the New York Times anymore and shut it off. That's not what they're likely to do, at least not for a long time. And that's not what we mean. But people react as if that's what we're saying to make it sound like it's not a real threat. That's covering up the truth. What's actually going to happen, what we already have to assume is happening right now, is that the information that you want, the impression of the world around you, is now going to be defined by the ISPs. Not by completely taking away major media outlets, but by simply deprioritizing the traffic and availability of services they don't like, while prioritizing services that they do like or that support what it is they want to promote. This could be as simple as taking a online newspaper that has one political leaning and another newspaper online that has a different political leaning, and simply making one slow and making one fast. This doesn't technically block anyone from getting it, but the one that's slow will instantly fall in Google and other search engine rankings. It will become annoying to use. People will stop looking at it because they don't want to put up with it anymore. They will stop linking to it to other people. People will stop knowing the product. Its relevance will fall. And over time, and not a lot of time, these little things will take the message that people are trying to get out and choose which things people see and which things people don't. Of course, if you went seeking it, you'd probably still find a way to find it, but you won't know to go seeking it because it won't exist in the consciousness anymore. The ability to completely carve out the view of the world that all people see cannot be overstated by how powerful this is, considering that we have a monopoly that guarantees they have access to you, and they guarantee that they can control what it is you get to perceive as the world around you and what all other people do. This is beyond what 1984 had. In 1984, it was so obvious that they were doing this that it was easy to fight it and say in your mind, well, obviously I'm being lied to. Why else would they do this? But this is just subtle enough that people are actually kind of feeling like it's not that bad, when it's possibly one of the worst things that's ever happened on American soil. This is the beginning of really bad things, but it's important to understand we are not seeing freedoms erode. We are seeing freedoms having been removed today, period. They're gone. You can't claim that the press is open and free in America today. That would be an absurd statement, given that the press doesn't have guaranteed open access to the market to get its product to you, even if you request it. The world has changed for America. It's simply how it is. When all people have their view of the world colored by the same coordinated propaganda engine, or in this case, a propaganda filter, the ISPs can make the world look however they want it to look. If they want to make you believe that a war you've heard about isn't going on, they can deprioritize any talk of that to a point where it seems like someone just made it up. Sure, you could look it up, but you'd have a hard time verifying the sources because nobody's using them. It would look like fake news today. And if there's a piece of news that's fake, but they want it to make it look really legitimate, they can simply prioritize it to a point where it's so common that people just assume it must be true. This becomes a lot easier to do over time, and it will become increasingly popular. And there may simply be engines, logic engines in software, that decide what things to prioritize and deprioritize based on keywords or topics or whatever. And this could become a very powerful propaganda engine extremely quickly, and no one would actually have the knowledge of exactly what was going on. And as consumers, there's no way for us to ever perceive it. It's universal and it's transparent. So we would never be able to say, well, this story was buried. We would have no way to guarantee that that was true, but we know that that's what just was approved to have happen. So that's starting to happen right now, and you can't say it's not, because you know that there was just a big government fight to guarantee that the ISPs can do this, and they have a system for making sure you can't see that it's happening. That's where we are today. And so because of that, the view of the world is now controlled by a few large corporations within America, and your freedom to understand the world around you has been revoked. That's my take on the net neutrality decision today, and I truly believe that all the people involved in it revoking it are truly enemies of the American people and have acted out of true malice. The desire, the greed for money in this situation cannot be compared to the amount of hatred that the FCC heads and the people who have been supporting them truly have to have for the public to be willing to allow money to come into such an unbelievably critical, fundamental decision. This is undermining what America has stood for centuries. And these people are some of the most significant enemies of the American state that we have faced in a very long time. And unfortunately, they now control the ability to determine how America views them, not just today, but into the future. Thanks for joining me. This has been a special on-the-spot Sam IT, and unfortunately it's a very sad topic, but there's nothing to be done about it. Our only hope is that Congress decides to step in and do something, because they have recognized the amount of corruption going on here, but the question is, does even Congress have the ability or the desire to do something about this level of macro corruption in America? Remember to like and subscribe, put your comments below. This should be a hot topic, and I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you.